Using Airtable for inventory management is a quite tricky task, and it is very easy for many things that look good on paper to quickly break in the real world. So in this video, we will discuss the most common mistakes, the main best practices, and also touch on whether Airtable is a good system for you to keep track of your inventory, or you're better off using something else. And I will walk you through the example system I built, which uses Anytime for automations and even automatically send purchase orders for suppliers. So let's see a demo of how that is going to look like, and then I will go through the best practices and the mistakes before I do the entire walkthrough. So to show you how everything works, we have a product list, which is just the basic data of the product. We can set to supplier, and we can see and cannot change the current quantity. We have a threshold quantity under which, if the stock goes under it, then we automatically place an order to the supplier with all the products that belong to that supplier. And then we have the refill quantity that we refill our product stock to. You can see that we are using the interfaces, so we're not interacting with the data tables directly. I will go into more details why we do that and how we do that. So we also have the sales order, which is a read-only table here, because the assumption is that the sales orders come from an external system or another base, and we usually don't need to edit it. Then we have the active POs, which are automatically generated. These draft orders are automatically generated whenever we need them. And what we can do here is to set it to the second status needs email. And then one of the automations running in the backend will send this simple email order out to the suppliers. If in real life we would want PDFs or anything like that, that can of course also work. And then all we have left is the suppliers table, which is just the basic data of the supplier, a name and an email in this case. And then in the backend, we have a lot of different data tables and formulas and connections and all that to make this work. And we also have the N8N automation, which is doing some of the heavy lifting for us, like creating the purchase orders and filling them up with products as it's needed. So I will look into more of how each of these systems work in just a little bit after I have covered the main mistakes and best practices that we need to pay attention when setting up our inventory management system. So let's look at the 4 main best practices and the mistakes to keep in mind. I think all 4 of these is going to be crucial for a successful inventory management implementation. The first one is that tracking the current stock value only is a mistake. So we might think that all we really need is just a single column for each product where we track the current quantity. Now this quickly goes wrong if there is a discrepancy. We cannot find where it came from. We cannot track the current forecast. We cannot forecast what if the current movement will go out and go in as simply. So to have a robust system, we do need to have a movement focused ledger of our stock in and stock out operations, and for that we do need stock in records, stock out records, and some kind of computation to get to our final quantity, which does perhaps sound like a bit of a complication of this system, but I find it to be very necessary to really have a robust inventory management solution. The second tip, or warning rather, is to be aware of Airtable's record limit, because as we established, we would usually be using one record per product movement, per product in each movement, which means that if we have 100 products and each of them are sold daily and or purchased daily, then we're looking at least 36,000 records added each year, which, as we can see, would pretty quickly exhaust our records per base. Now, I think if we if we have enough records for a year, that's generally good enough because we can always create a new base and just roll over the final quantity from last year to the new base. I think that's good enough. But if we have a lot more products, say 1,000, then without enterprise, we would really need to switch these bases quite quickly, which I think in most cases would defeat the purpose of using Airtable. And also we should be aware that these are priced per seat, although it is possible with Airtable portals or other solutions sometimes to allow, or front-end builders to allow multiple people to edit certain things, but the simplest thing is usually adding those people as collaborators, and in which case each people who can edit that base is going to be paying, or your business will be paying for them this price per seat. So that is something to keep in mind. And again, related to that is the third one, to consider alternatives to Airtable. I think Airtable for this use case mostly makes sense if you already have a lot of your other data, including product data and potentially some order data in Airtable, because you can really connect between these and your inventory much simpler than if you are using an external system. For only inventory management system based on this pricing and limits, there are definitely better solutions. So this really comes down to how customized an interface you need, because with Airtable you get a really customizable interface, and whether you already have your company data in Airtable. Otherwise, you probably can find better solutions than that for just an inventory management system. And the last one, which I have already touched on a little bit, is to use interfaces. So this is more of a general Airtable tip if you have a complex database structure and or multiple members of the team can access the data or has to edit the data, and potentially they have to see and be able to edit different things, especially. However, in this scenario, I think it's especially important because it's a quite complex database structure and the logic is also a little bit delicate. So if we really don't want anything to break, then we should create interfaces with only the things editable that we want to be edited in that specific scenario that this interface is for, and only the fields visible that we want to be able to view. So for example, in the bottom, we have the entire supplier data table, which is really a little confusing. But if we have this front-end interface that is really only there for us to be able to add the new supplier and set their name and email, which is really what 99% of the time we would want to be doing. And also then this can be shared with the specific people who can manage and add suppliers without them having to totally understand how the data table works and potentially making mistakes unintentionally by just not updating the correct places. In the rest of the video, I will first do a walkthrough of the bases and automations that is required for this setup to run, and giving you smaller tips and tricks to structure all this data along the way. Then at the end of the video, I will show you some tips to customize it to your specific business context and workflow, and how to change everything in a way that exactly fits how you want it to be. And if you're wondering if you can get the template of the automations and the base, both of them are available down in the description for free. you can find the link to it, and also the base is copyable, and the workflow you can put into your N8N account if you have one, or make one if you don't. And also I have the entire raw footage that I do plan to upload there as well, with me building out this entire system, also explaining some of the thought process that went into it. So if you really want to know each of the details and not just see this walkthrough, which will be a little more high level, then also check out that in the video notes. So let's get into the bases first. All right, so now let's take a look at our Airtable bases. The first one, and one of the more clear-cut ones, is the suppliers, where we basically have a name and an email. And then we have our order email beginning, which is practically the third one that here we can customize. So I just added that on a supplier level because maybe we want to structure our order emails slightly differently per each supplier. And then the products, and that is just some of the others are just really the reverse of linked fields from the other end, so we don't have to think too much of them. We do have this draft PO count, which is practically a helper field for an automation, so we are able to check if there is already a draft PO or not, and then we have the ID for that. So that's these are really just helper fields for the application. For the automation, we probably don't want to generally see them, so they can be hidden in the default view. And then we have the products, where again the whole thing is similar, that we have some editable fields. I do want to mention that we are keeping these on interfaces. So as I said before, we really want to show the operational people only what they specifically need to see and what they need to be able to edit in the specific process, which makes everything faster and also minimizes the possibility of errors compared to if they have to or we have to edit the tables directly. So usually this is more streamlined, and we have a supplier and a product table here where I really only added what we need to be able to edit. And we can also, I can go to the edit pages page, so we can check out that we can change what fields we are adding here. So for the products, everything is editable, and there is also a form where we can click in and then see a more focused view. So I have also enabled that for products by default. I think it's not enabled, so you have to click on it and enable it. Yeah, but that's basically it. And then we have a couple of helper fields again. So for example, one of them is total received quantity, total ordered quantity, and total sold quantity. And then from these, we would at the end use a formula to calculate the current quantity and the forecast quantity. And then the whole logic basically goes that if the forecast quantity is lower than the threshold quantity, because then we have to order, and that is because even if the current quantity is lower, but we have already an order on the way, then we don't want to order from the supplier. And then we have the supplier, which is a linked field to suppliers. So those are the main ones. And yeah, we can see here again that that we only keep either what is important to see, what is the current quantity, and what we can edit on this view. Yeah, if we have a more complicated operation, then we might want to have multiple views. For example, maybe different people, or in different scenarios, people want to edit the threshold and the refill compared to when they just want to check what are the available quantities. So perhaps we can have multiple views and then share it with different people, all that. Then we have the sales order, which really we can view together with the stock out, because the stock outs are sort of the lines. They both function as sales order lines, as well as the actual inventory movement that we can keep, that we can also use to at the end keep track of what we have had already. So this stockouts basically have, for the most important ones is that they are linked to a sales order, they are linked to a quantity, they have a quantity, and then they are linked to a product. And so this is a nice little trick to have, that we can use a formula like this with and signs to concatenate the different fields into a simple name field. And so this one really shows what is going, the entire line, which is basically the product and the quantity. And so here in the stockout field, we can review by their names. And this is also especially useful for our interface. I will go to the view where we can click into the stockout, and we can practically see the order lines here. So what SKU and what PCs we have from each of those. And yeah, for sales orders, sort of the logic that I went with here is that we're probably getting it from an external system. I think most of the times we would either get it from an e-commerce store or our POS system or whatever else. So I'm sort of adding it externally from the automation, and not, I didn't make an interface to add it manually. It would also be possible, of course, but practically this automation is just, this part of this automation is able to create a new workflow, which is not, and after refresh, I should be able to just start it. And we can see that it goes through, it creates the sales order, then it gets a list of products, and it creates a sales order lines with random quantities, which is just this is just for testing, but basically this is how we are able to create a new sales order line in this testing sort of environment. I will talk a little bit more about at the end, like how would in practice implement this. And yeah, so this is what we have: the sales orders and the stock out, and then we have the purchase orders and the stock in, which is sort of the mirror image of the same. So it would also be possible to unify this and just have stock movements instead of stock out, stock in. I think because in some cases the logic would be subtly different, especially for automations. It is better to keep them separate, because then most of the logic we would sort of filter them anyway, and we would have to branch out for most of the automations we're building. So it's easier to, in my opinion, to just keep these in separate tables. That also doesn't affect our record count limitations, because it's going to be the same amount of records, just in multiple fields. And we can also, of course, duplicate a table when we are building it. So we can sort of do one part, then duplicate, and then change what we want to change. So we have one sort of interesting field here that we can take a look, is the status last modified. So this is very useful for automations, that if we make a last modified time field, then we can choose what field we want to track, and this way we can make a field which is only tracking the modification of the status field, and so the automation can really be triggered only when there is a change in the status. This is very handy with external automations like Anytime. Other than that, we have a status, which is draft needs email order and received, and we have a supplier, and this is a lookup field for the email, and we have sort of the stock in records, which is the order lines, and we have the order email beginning, which is a lookup from the supplier. And here we have the order lines, which is actually just a roll up concatenating together, and the order lines, the stock ins, and adding a new line every time between them. So this is we will be able to put this in an email body if we want to send it out. And then here we can also take a look at how we handle this on our front end, on our interfaces, that I have made it in a way that the supplier is actually unauditable, because always the POs are going to be auto-created by the automation. So whenever there is no draft order, it's going to create a draft order. So we really don't need to do anything with it, and it can even mess things up if we would sometimes manually accidentally edit it. So that's not editable. Order lines also isn't editable because it's also sort of a computed thing. So we only have the status, and that one we can edit from draft to needs email when we want the email to be sent out, and then order to received when we actually received it, and that's going to update the quantity. So here again, the same sort of principle applies, that we are only making editable what we want to be edited at the specific stage of the process. And we're only showing other things that are really important to understand what's going on here. So we know what are the order lines, and we know what is the supplier that we're getting this order from. So this is sort of the minimal. And then of course, we can keep the data table as something that we need to edit in case of rare situations when something is non-standard and we want to change parts of an order, all that. If you got this far, it's probably safe to say that you are interested in building Airtable applications as well as different automations. So make sure to subscribe and see the next similar videos. And if you have something specific in mind, then also make sure to comment it under the video. I will check them and try to add them into the calendar if it's relevant. Now let's go back to the N8N part. The last part here is going to be our N8N automation, and I think one of the basic important part of understanding N8N automations working with Airtable is the trigger. So these little lightning bolts indicate that this is a trigger field. So it starts the automation if there is something specific happened in Airtable. And so in this case, we are listening to any modification of purchase orders, POs. And if you get the template, then one thing that you will need to do is that you have to duplicate the Airtable base, and then in this to the trigger field, you unfortunately cannot get it in a dropdown. So you need to go to the purchase order table and just copy and paste the URL into here. And so this is going to start the automation anytime that something changes in our purchase order table. Then in the second one, we are searching for anything that has a draft PO count of 0. So there is no draft order, and then we create a draft order if there is no draft order. So this always makes sure that for any supplier, we always have a draft order and open order. And why is that important? Well, that is important because we want to add products whenever we need to the latest order, to the next purchase order from a specific supplier. And for this one, because it would have been more difficult to set up with triggers, I am using an hourly trigger. So every hour this is going to run, and this is going to add any product that we need to order from based on our logic. So there is too little in our inventory. And then there is basically we find the products that need to be purchased, which we have a need refill formula for, and we find the existing stock in if it exists, we find the draft PO, and then we either edit or create the new stock in, so the purchase order line practically. And then we have the last one, which is just when the purchase order enters needs email. For this, we are using a filter formula in our trigger. So whenever it gets to the needs email, then we will use the Gmail send message to send out RPO. And yes, if you would be setting it up with the Cloud Anytime version, then adding a Google credential is really just clicking on this sign in with Google, and from that moment your Anytime can already talk to your Gmail, which is quite convenient. If you would want to self-host Anytime, or you're self-hosting Anytime, then it's a little more complicated, but it is in that case too explained in these docs. Yes, and then we have the test SO generation here. So that's the last part of this automation. And as I said, this is the entire template is available in the video notes, and also the full video of me building out this automation. So that's part of why I don't cover each and every detail, because you can really view. If you are interested in that granularity, then you can watch that video when I build it out in real time, and you can really understand each and every part of it. So as we're getting to the end of this video, let's take a look at what are the possibilities for really customizing this. I think one of the probably the most obvious thing that you would need to change, or you would need to work on in any case, is that the sales order generation part or sales order obtaining part would probably be different. And really, depending on how you are getting your sales order, you can use, for example, the Shopify node to get the details of an order. If you are using e-commerce, or WooCommerce is also available. Or another possibility is that, for example, your POS system or whatever else would have an export function that you could use to see what the daily sales were, and then you can set that up based on that and update the inventory. So in that case, it's not really a sales order, but for our intent, this is going to be the same, like a daily sales or weekly or anything similar. And I think the other part that I would probably customize based on the really specific scenario is the interfaces that we interact with this application with. So as I said before, it's always preferred to, you're almost always preferred to use interfaces compared to data tables, because here we can really specify the process that we want to work with. So here we can go to edit pages. This is in the interfaces tab on the top, and we can really think about what else we want to add, what we want to make editable, what we want to make read-only. We can go to the fields here and lock everything that we want. For example, maybe I want to lock SKUs, because when adding a record, it's more than enough to change it at that time, or auto-generate it. So it's that kind of thing. We want to see what are the specifics that we really want to regularly edit. Maybe we never need to edit our product, and then we don't really need that. Maybe we are just importing it one time from somewhere. And of course, it's also a possibility that we want to synchronize this and use it together with other Airtable bases. That is basically the main strengths of Airtable, the different parts of the business, different departments of a company can use the same tools, and they have some ways of synchronizing data between them, as opposed to using many different systems. So yeah, I think it is quite possible that, for example, you have another product information management base for the business or e-commerce store or anything else that you're running. And in that scenario, you really just want to get the product data from another place where it already exists, in another base where it already exists, but you don't want to put everything to the same base, so you can keep access and everything else separate. So in that scenario, you can use the plus sign, go to Airtable base, and just choose the base table and view, and you are able to sync the data from one base to another. Quite likely it's going to be a similar logic with suppliers too, because maybe you are also tracking expenses and vendor invoices in another base, and then you can really connect that together with your inventory management. Or connect the specific data that is the supplier related data, which you would use for multiple different aspects of your business. Thank you for watching this video. Check out the video notes in the description and subscribe for more similar videos. Bye for now.